Hey there, Otaku Mom here, and I'm here because I'm going to do a review of Sonic the Hedgehog. I just got back from the movie, and um, so there's a lot of things I want to talk about with this film, and so and we're also going to get into the sudden Twitter feud that's going on in regards to this versus the fans of the movie Birds of Prey. So, but first of all, I want to start with review of this film. Okay, so for the two of you in the world that don't know this, this is the movie Sonic the Hedgehog. It is based on the Sega classic game from the 1990s, from the early 1990s. Um, that was on the Sega Genesis, and since then, obviously, they've come out with a lot more games and whatnot. And so, I used to play Sonic when I was a kid. Not so much now. I think I've tried playing it a few times since then, um, but I haven't had a chance to play it myself in a while. So a lot of the references are probably gone over my head. But there's a few things I know. One I recognize as Sonic. One I recognize as Doctor Robotnik, aka Eggman, here in the States. And I noticed a lot of other references and a few other references that I caught here and there. Uh, a lot of them were a lot of them went over my head. Um, I definitely caught the reference at the end of the movie during the post-credit scene, which I'm not going to spoil. There's two post-credit scenes in this film, so make sure you watch them. Um, and But to get into the film, so the movie is basically about Sonic. He is played by he is voiced by Ben Schwartz, and um, he's basically trying to escape. He escapes into our world because he's being hunted. He was being hunted in his world for his power, so he escapes into our world. And so he's been here a while. He feels lonely, and but then he suddenly found out. And he has to find a way. And he ends up losing something in San Francisco, and he has to get some help from a local sheriff, um, played by James Marsden, and who has to drive him to San Francisco to get this item. And at the same time, he's now being pursued by Doctor Robotnik, who is played by Jim Carrey. Now, the one thing that you can't ignore about this film is the redesign they did on Sonic. Now, the reason being is that this is one of the big things about this film. Excuse me. So, um, so one of the big things about this film is the fact that they ended up doing this redesign of Sonic for the film. Because if you look on the left, is what we typically call the nightmare fuel version of Sonic. Um, you notice his eyes are smaller, his teeth look more human. If I were to expand the picture any further, um, they tried to make him realistic to our world, and yeah, that didn't quite work. Um, the trailers were released and as soon as the trailers come out, people were like, "What the heck is this?" Um, this is not Sonic. This is a monstrosity. And people were complaining online. People were making fun of it and doing all this. And then a couple days later, after the trailer was released, the director came out, um, said they heard the audience. They heard the audience. They're going to redesign, and they're going to take some time to do it. This movie was originally supposed to be released in November, and in order to fix it, they decided to wait. They decided to push it back to February. So, does the redesign uh, change anything in regards to this film? Now, I think it does, uh, and I'll tell you why. one of the things about the redesign is that if you look at it, they made him look more cartoonish. They made him look more like the video game. And I think the biggest improvement on this is the fact that he does look more cartoonish. He looks more like the video game. Because unfortunately, when you talk about the design on the left, you're kind of going into what we call uncanny valley territory, in that he looks a little too realistic and you're just kind of frightened of him. And you just and it was just a bad design overall. They made him look more cartoony. They made him in that one on the left. They made him look more. They tried to make him look more realistic. His legs were more muscular. His arm, the colors were off, and it just did not look like Sonic. Okay. On the right, he looks more cartoony. He has the bigger eye. They made his eyes bigger. Yes, I do realize in the cartoon his eyes actually connect to each other, but they actually kind of alluded to it by putting a light colored fur. You can't see it in this picture, but if you look at if you were to look at it maybe from top down or from another angle, you can see it's actually like a light piece of section fur that's like a tan color, alluding to the fact that in the actual cartoon and video game, the eyes actually connect. So that was one thing they improved on. One of the things that instead of in the previous design, his hands are more like human hands. This is more the new design. They give him the gloves. In the previous design, they gave him different sneakers. In this one, the sneakers look more like what he got what he had in the comics, not in the comics. Sorry, in the video games. So yeah, they actually worked to make sure that Sonic looked the way he's supposed to look for this movie, and taking the look from the video games. And so, with that being said, does that improve the movie? I think in this case it did, because I think if I was forced to look at the Sonic on the left for the entire 100 minutes of this film, I'd be there shaking my head like, what the heck did they do to you, Sonic? I'm glad. So I am glad they changed the look. I'm glad they changed it to make him look more like the more classic Sonic, the more classic what we think of as Sonic. And it also shows good faith effort to please the fans too, because they could have because a lot of films these days are like, just screw the fans, we don't care. Not the movie, but a lot of these producers and stuff, screw the fans, we're trying to create art, and Sonic is not art. It is a video game movie. And with that being said, I'm glad that they actually listened to the fans on this one and said, okay, we heard you, we're going to fix it. And they fixed it, and I think it's a better movie for it. Now, with that being said, is it a good movie in general? Yeah, there's actually a lot to like about this film. It's a kids movie. I mean, it has its faults, but let me talk about the good first. Okay. Besides the fact that they redesigned Sonic, the story itself is very kid friendly. It has some. The story itself is very kid friendly, talking about the importance of friends and loneliness and having those themes, and showing the difference between Sonic, who longs for friends and who has no friends because of the imminent danger that could put him in, versus Dr. Robotnik, who who has no friends out of choice and sees them as a hindrance, and just kind of makes their stories kind of clash a bit.
Um, and I mean that's like typical. That's like typical kid movie stuff. But for the most part, it worked. It worked very well. Don't expect going into this thinking that you're dealing with a heroic Sonic. Think of this as an origin story. Okay, so this is like Sonic in his beginnings. He's still very young in this film. He still acts very young, and for the most part, he hasn't become a hero quite yet. For these, I'm sure there's a lot of little Easter eggs in the film. I didn't spot a lot of them. I spotted a few of them. I didn't spot a lot of them because again, I've only played like the first game, and I'm familiar with characters here and there from watching like some of the cartoons sometimes. But um, no, but a real Sonic fan will probably get a kick out of a lot of stuff they put into the film. Um, so sorry, I've got my nose is like stuffed, so I'm trying to swallow. My throat's getting dry at the same time, so pardon me there. But but yeah, I mean, as far as the story goes, as far as the film goes, it's a good time. You have a really good time with this film. Um, it has its faults. One thing I was talking about with my husband when I got home was that probably one of the biggest is that um, I felt maybe the story maybe needed a little more time. So there was a little bit of a pacing issue there that I felt. I felt it was probably a little too quick. Of which my husband responded, "Of course it's quick. It's Sonic." but but I felt the story itself was felt very short and quick. Um, and the movie's only about 100 minutes, so it's not a very long movie. And I think they could have spent maybe a little more time on the road here and there. It was probably because there's only like really a couple of scenes they spend on the road before they end up in San Francisco, and and but other than that, a lot of the actors, Ben Schwartz, who does the voice of Sonic for this film, he does a really good job of conveying this young character and this character who is quite young. I mean, he's still a child when this movie takes place. He's still a child. He's not a grown up. Um, so he does a lot of childish things in the film, and so because of that, he can be very naive. He could be uh, he acts like a kid, and because of that, because of that, he's not the hero that we expect him to be, but at least not right away anyway for this film. So, but Ben Schwartz, he could have made this character really annoying. Um, and I didn't. There were some other critics that said they felt he was annoying. I didn't think he was that annoying. He did a really good job with the voice. Um, but yeah, Ben Schwartz did a really good job with voicing Sonic in this film, and portraying him as this kid who's been by himself, who's been raising himself, and kind of has the filter of someone who's been raising himself um, this whole time. So, um, so Ben Schwartz was really good as Sonic's voice. So the next one I want to talk about is as far as the cast goes. Let me bring up the picture here. Is Dr. Robotnik. He's played by Jim Carrey, and I felt this was basically him going back to form for his from his 90s days, from his movies like Dumb and Dumber and uh, Dumb and Dumber and Ace Ventura and Liar Liar, which is probably one of my favorite films of his. And this is him going back to his comedy roots. Now, he is like his character is like really over the top, which really fit this character. his version of Dr. Robotnik. He's not going to be the Dr. Robotnik that everybody knows. That everybody knows from the games. Because this is sort of an origin story for him too. And this is so when we're introduced to Dr. Robotnik, he is this kind of smarmy. I don't know if smarmy is the right word for it. He's hyper intelligent. He wants these robots. He likes his robots over people. Very smug, and gets very easily frustrated with people who aren't to his intelligence. And Jim Carrey does an excellent job with Dr. Robotnik in this film. It's not the Dr. Robotnik that is in the games necessarily, at least not right away anyway, but eventually ends up becoming that character. And one thing I loved is they actually managed to work in both. They actually managed to work in Dr. Robotnik and the name Eggman into the film. I'm not going to say how they did it, but they managed to work both names into the film. Because over in Japan he's known as Dr. Robotnik, over here in the US he's known as Eggman for some reason. And but Jim Carrey did a really good job with this character, and did a really good job with Dr. Robotnik, and he was probably one of the highlights of the film. And so anytime they cut to him, it was definitely a joy to watch him on the screen. It was great. So he was probably one of the highlights of the film. Now the next one is James Marsden, who played our road trip companion Tom in the film. And one thing that I'm going to shrink this a little bit so it's not blocking me here. One thing that was pointed out is that James Marsden seems to do really good with CGI characters, and because he also did the same, he did the same thing in the movie Hop, where he was taking a CGI rabbit across the country. And he's basically doing the same thing here with Sonic. He's taking him across the country. And for his part, he did a good job too. He and his banter with not only Sonic but also Dr. Robotnik at points is really good. And so yeah, this was he did a really good job with what he had in this film, and yeah, so he was definitely perfect as the companion for Sonic. There isn't a whole lot to say about his character, other than he plays a cop. He plays a cop who's supposed to be going to San Francisco to get a job, and something happens to Sonic, and he ends up taking him to San Francisco. So yeah, but he plays very well against the Sonic character, and interacts with him very well in the film. So there's no complaints there. So, and like I said, also his interactions with Dr. Robotnik worked very well together too. So, as far as my recommendation for the film, definitely check it out. And I'm just adjusting here so I can definitely check out the film. And check it out and support it, and because it's the fans that basically improved this film and told the director, yeah, we're not going to see it with that previous design, and definitely were the ones that gave us the Sonic we needed for this film, for this series, And so definitely go out and definitely go and check it out. Like I said, it's not a perfect movie. It has its flaws, um, but definitely go see it. Um, Now, what I'm about to talk about right now goes into a little bit of spoiler territory, but not a whole lot. So if you don't want spoilers, you can shut it off right now, or you can skip ahead, um, or you can skip ahead until I start talking about the Twitter war of Birds of Prey. um, but yeah, so some of the little spoiler things. So 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so some of the spoiler things. There was a couple of jokes in here that probably fly over the head of the kids. Just as a warning that I maybe cringed a little bit. um, because this is supposed to be a kids movie. It's PG, so it's basically a family movie. Um, at one point, Dr. Robotnik does say the word hell, and my son just turned to me during the theater and goes, his mom, he swore. And yeah, I can hear my son giggling in the background. I'm like, honey, it's PG. They may swear once in a while. um, but although James Marsden does almost say son of a in the film. No, I'm not one that's I don't have an issue with swearing, but I thought that would be a good warning for parents who may have an issue with swearing. But that's like the worst of it as far as that goes. I mean, as far as the actual language goes, there were a couple of jokes they might flow over your kids' heads, um, and but they kind of made me cringe a little bit. Uh, and both of them both of them involve Doctor Robotnik. Um, where in one scene uh, he's letting loose his robots, and his line is something along the lines of, "Well, this has come out of my egg sack," and that kind of made me cringe a little bit. And there was one joke there was also another joke involving an exchange between James Marsden, his character's named Tom, between James Marsden as Tom and Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik, he says where Dr. Robotnik says to James Marsden to try to show him how intelligent he goes. He says, well, oh, when I was a toddler, I was writing formulas while you were spitting up formula." And James Marsden says to him, "I was breastfed actually." And yeah, that one was a little cringy too. So just as kind of a warning. Um, so my son's 11, so it's like I'm past the point at some points. I'm like, okay, if he hears that, that's not a big deal. But those are probably the worst of it as far as like more quote unquote adult jokes in there. Um, but uh, other than that, there wasn't really a whole lot that was like super offensive in the film that some parents might object to. Um, I'm trying to think if there was any other jokes that might have gone a little too adult. I can't think of any others. I mean, there's obviously a fart joke in there, but it's a kids movie. There's got to be a fart joke in there somewhere because kids fighting farts funny. Uh, I should know. I work as a teacher's assistant in a kindergarten class. Oh man, but yeah, kids find farts funny, um, regardless of how you try to wrangle them. Um, but other than that, um, nothing really super offensive in the film that I can remember. Um, other than those things, and again, they might have been cringy to me, but they weren't like, yeah, I'm not gonna let my kid watch this again, but they weren't like, I'm never gonna let my kid watch this again, kind of cringy. Um, but they were, but I'm just putting that out there as sort of a warning to parents who might be watching who might want to take their film if they don't want their kids to hear jokes like that. Um, like I said, for me, it doesn't bother me too much. So, so yeah, I'm just kind of putting that out there. Um, and like I mentioned, there is two credit post credit scenes. Um, and since we're in a section where we talk about spoilers, um, well, the two credit scenes. The first one the first one is we find out what happened to Dr. Robotnik at the end of the film. He ends up well, at the end of the film he gets teleported to the mushroom world, which which I'm gonna say is not a dig at is meant to be a dig at Nintendo. Which a lot of people were reporting. They thought maybe it was a dig at Nintendo. Actually, it's an Easter egg for those who have played Sonic the Hedgehog 2, because there actually is a mushroom world in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So that's what that's actually a reference to. And so uh, we get to see what happens to Robotnik on that. And then at that point he is starting to look more like the Robotnik we remember from the video games. The other one is uh, the other one is after the credits after the for like a um mid credit one where which may be hinting at the sequel, um because they now have uh they showed Tails coming into our world looking for Sonic. And so that was definitely a crowd pleaser. And what I'm guessing is I'm wondering if this happened because my son and I were talking about this after the movie. Is that I wonder if they had to change Tails' redesign as well for the film, because of the fact of because of how bad of a reaction Sonic's. So, because my conclusion would be that if the original design for Sonic also applied to Tails, they probably had to change both of them in order to they probably had to change both of them so it wouldn't be a total wash. Okay, so that's my feeling, is that they may have had to change both designs. I don't know. That'd be actually an interesting question to bring up. So, so yeah, so we, so yeah, so 3, 2, 1. So I'm gonna end the spoil section right here. So 3, 2, 1, 4, 5. There we go. I don't know why I just did it that way, but anyway. So okay, spoiler section's done, and my definite recommendation is go see this. It's not a perfect movie. It's a good popcorn movie, and definitely go see it. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about in regards to this film is that, of course, the people who went to see Birds of Prey are a little butthurt about about this, um, because Birds of Prey came out last weekend. 3 days after the movie came out, at least for the search engines anyway, they've changed the title from Birds of Prey and the Emancipation, which the original title was Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn, to just Harley Quinn Birds of Prey. And because apparently Harley Quinn's the main character in the movie, and the Birds of Prey are just kind of like side characters in this. So they said the movie should be actually titled Harley Quinn Birds of Prey, but sorry. And so, but I don't think that's going to help in regards to the box office. The movie underperformed last weekend, and I'll give you my opinion why. Now, I mean, the people who are claiming is like, oh, these men are just misogynists and all that.
If you look at the numbers for this film, for who went to go see the film, it was pretty evenly split, like it was for Suicide Squad. Now, Birds of Prey is supposed to be a direct sequel to Suicide Squad. And I think what hurt it, well, at least one of the factors that hurt the film and its box office is the R rating as a primary reason why this movie is not doing as well as it hoped. And I'll explain why. Now, people are going to bring up examples like Deadpool and Logan and Joker. All three comic book films, all three have an R rating, and they all did really well at the box office. Now, I'm not saying the R rating is the only factor, but it could be one of the bigger ones. And I'll explain why. Now, the reason why being that I think it plays a bigger factor is because of the fact that Suicide Squad was PG-13. Now, when Suicide Squad was released, about 28% of their, it was over 20%, of their audience was under 17, under 25, or under 17. And when Birds of Prey was released, that got cut to about 14%. So why aren't teenagers going to see this? Because they can't get into the theater to go see it. The movie's rated R, and because of that, they have to go in with an adult or a guardian, with somebody who is over 17 to go see Birds of Prey. And because of that, the audience got severely cut in regards to the box office. They couldn't draw in the younger crowd because it's 17, but they didn't even advertise the movie that way either. So they advertised it as like big, bombastic, bright colors and whatnot, and advertise it similar to how they advertised Suicide Squad. Now, with that being said, because of that advertising that they were doing for Birds of Prey being similar to Suicide Squad, people were looking at it, were like, nah, I didn't like Suicide Squad, or like, maybe this is just more for younger people, and didn't bother to go see it. And because of that, people thinking it was more of a teenage film could have hurt his chances too. Even though the movie is, like I said, it is rated R. So I think one of the mistakes they made was that they should have aimed the advertising at adults, so that more adults would want to go see the film. Now, I mentioned that, and this is why Deadpool, Logan, Joker were able to get their audiences, was because they made it clear in their advertising campaigns and in their marketing campaigns that their movies, are not for kids. They are for adults. And in their marketing, they made sure to make that very clear, that these are adult films. These are for adults. And that is why Deadpool's been successful. That's why Logan was successful. That's why Joker was successful. All three of them comic book films, but they were aimed at grown-ups. And in the marketing, they made sure to let people know that these are not the typical Marvel, DC films that were coming out that were PG-13. They're all rated R films. They're for adults. Birds of Prey was not that clear about it. In fact, I didn't even know the movie was rated R until recently. Because I thought it was the reason I didn't want to go see that was because I didn't see Suicide Squad. But
But I think that was also may have caused some confusion in the market too. Is that they didn't tell people uh, is that the fact that the it's not clear on whether the kid it's not clear on whether um, that played a factor. I'm sure it did. That the rating played a factor on this one too, because of the fact that you've got a movie that was PG-13 and its direct sequel is rated R. Um, so I'm sure that didn't help, and because then you've just cut your audience like in half for that movie. Now some people are doing the get woke go broke thing with the movie too. I'm sure that may have had something to do with it too, with at least with some viewers anyway. Um, but I honestly don't think that was a huge factor. It might have been a little bit of a factor, but I don't think it was a huge factor. That's why Birds of Prey did not open strongly last weekend. Now, with that being said, those people who are fans of Birds of Prey and want the movie to do well are trying their best to try to sink the Sonic movie, because that is the next big movie to come out this week. Now, if you go online, you'll see a bunch of tweets that basically say the same thing. Saying, I went to see the Sonic movie and it had all these homophobic and racist stuff. I took my kids to see Birds of Prey instead and they had a better time. And a lot of these movies, a lot of these Twitter comments came out before the movie even was released. So it's like, how did you take your kid to see this movie? And two, if you took your kid to see Bird of Prey over Sonic, that's a great parenting right there. Um, but a lot of people aren't buying into it, thankfully. And why you should listen to everybody. And from my viewing of the movie, I didn't see anything that was even close to homophobic or racist in the film. Nothing whatsoever. And these are just people who they are so desperate to want their movie to do better that they're willing to try to sink other movies to try to make them and it's not working. I just checked the box office for Thursday for the previews and Saturday. Thursday it made $3 million, and Friday it made 21 million. So it's on track to it's on track to make a potential 60 plus million by the time that President's Day comes around. So it's on track. It's on track to make that money. So it's already number one. Birds of Prey has dropped to number two. And this is I honestly I think Sonic's probably gonna make the same numbers as it's probably going to make the same numbers as Detective Pikachu, which I also like that film. That was a good film also. I think the makers of video game films are starting to get better at listening to what the fans want. And listening to the complaints that people have had over the years with regards to video game movies and making these video game movies. Now, with that being said, I can actually understand a lot of frustration with the people who are making these video game movies because they're trying to adapt something that may have who knows how many hours of cutscenes and footage and whatnot, a story into there, and they're trying to condense it into maybe 2.5 hours, depending on it. Resident Evil has been a successful video game franchise, not only on the video games but also as a series of movies. Not saying all of them were very good, but because I tried watching one of them in one of the hotel rooms one time, in a hotel room one time. I'd have my brother explain it to me because he was in the room with us. But yeah, Resident Evil was a successful series. Um, I think Tomb Raider was successful. The one with the Angelina Jolie one. I think that was successful because uh, one, it had Angelina Jolie, and two, it was at least the first one was successful enough to warrant a sequel. So they were only like two out of that one. I don't know what the numbers were for the more recent one with the ones with Alicia Vikander as Laura Croft. I have to look that up. But um, but yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog right now is looking to be probably one of the most successful video game movies of all time, and especially if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, it's fresh. It's like 60. I think last time I checked, it maybe was 60, 63, 64%. The audience score was like in the 90s. So definitely people are liking this movie. They're definitely praising this movie. So the general audience is really liking this movie. So there's really a definite disconnect between the two films, between the critics versus the audience. So anyway, so my final thoughts: go see this movie. It's a good kids movie. Not perfect, but it's a good kids movie. You'll have a good time with it, and ignore the Twitter crybabies. Okay, so from Otaku Mom, bye. And oh, before I forget, like and subscribe. Bye bye.